Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios. This is episode number 53 of the UCF Knightline podcast, and joining me,
I'm Trylko. Hello, everyone.
Well, another loss.
Yes.
0-4 now on the season. A 31-14 loss at South Carolina. You know, there were definitely positives about this game, though. There definitely were. Bo Schneider got into a little bit of a rhythm at one point. Unfortunately, had a couple interceptions, but I think some groups definitely played a little bit better. Some groups didn't make any progress whatsoever.
I know we got some messages on social media during the week asking us if we had stepped back from the ledge.
Yeah.
Because last week was just, we had to get it out.
Yeah.
I think that's how fans felt. You just
and
wanted
I'm sorry
to get it out.
It was such a long episode, but we needed to talk about stuff. This one is not going to be that long. I'm sorry about that. I know that it's by one person telling me that my voice is hard to listen to anyway. Did you see that message?
No, I didn't.
Oh, wow, yeah. Somebody decided to...
I would just tell you that. I wouldn't type it on a message board. No, just kidding.
It was if it was you, I'm going to be pissed.
I'm just kidding.
No, it was somebody who told me to look up the definition of voice stress or something like that and blah, blah, blah. But I replied back to her that I do this voice just for her and just to make it difficult, just because I know that she doesn't like it and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's my voice, and this is what you got, and I work with it.
Hey, my voice sounds pretty good for as much screaming as I did in Columbia.
Yeah, so you went to the game.
And just back in time to record the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Overall, good time, obviously, with friends and UCF alumni, and the weather held out, and we didn't get poured on, and we didn't bake in the sun, and for at least a half, at least a half, it was fun. And as UCF quarterback Kyle Israel will join us in just a few moments to talk about, and UCF fans well know, it is that second half that has been a disaster for the first four games.
I appreciate people talking back and forth on Twitter and stuff, by the way. I want to say that to you guys that do. I really liked the interaction that I have with the fans of the show.
Twittering fool during the game.
It is usually me, by the way, that is doing the tweeting.
And
that's my word. Yeah, tweeting. And so just so you know who you're talking to, it is 99% me that's doing that. Yeah, but I really appreciate people talking back to me and, even calling me out on something that I say that may be stupid or...
that happens?
Every once in a while,
really?
Somebody will call. Yeah, somebody will say something every once in a while. I don't think it happened this time, but whatever. It is what it is, and I like the interaction. It's awesome. I try to do that as much as I can. I kind of got a little bit quiet during the second half because I was drinking a little bit more. So I didn't start drinking until the second half.
You didn't start drinking on the dropped interception, the first play of the game?
No, I probably should have, though.
Boy, that would have set a tone, wouldn't it?
It would have. It would have.
You got a freshman quarterback out there for South Carolina, and it would have been nice to get into his head a little bit. He had success, as we saw, when he was able to break free and run. But isn't it true that when UCF was able to put pressure on him in any meaningful way, it disrupted him?
Absolutely.
A sack here, or they crumpled on him and tackled him quickly, or the dropped interceptions. So lesson learned there. A little bit of pressure help a lot.
Yeah, the defense is not our major problem, to be honest with you.
They're on the field just way too long.
They are. They're on the field way too often, but when they are on the field, they actually did pretty well the other day.
Some mistakes. Tackling, still an issue.
Yeah.
Improvement, though, week to week, or
absolutely,
since Stanford?
Absolutely. And we've always had problems with running quarterbacks, and I knew that this guy was going to start, and, I was just waiting for him to get comfortable and start running. And I knew that it was going to be a problem. So,
but if the interceptions, just gifts in the hand,
right,
drop.
There were a couple.
That first one, you intercept it, they go down, they get this 51-yard field goal. I know, 3 points. What is it? But it changes the game when you don't win that turnover battle, right?
Yeah. There were definitely some questionable, things at one point on Twitter. I wanted, Key to resign or whatever, and I
Were you
still
upset
kind
about
of
play
do.
calling, though, as compared to previous weeks when we had some very questionable play calls?
It's better. It's better. And I know that it's part Bo getting comfortable back there and them opening it up. And they did a little bit. But they've got to give him some stuff to work with. I still didn't hardly see screen passes used. Screen passes have been very valuable to the UCF offense for years. I don't know why they're not calling screen passes. One of the situations that was the worst for me to deal with was when we got pinned down on that punt and we were in our own end zone. And with the way that the ball is being run in the offensive line play, I don't think that that was a good idea to try to run the ball up the middle. I know that is the typical play that everybody does at that point. You want to just easily, not in exciting fashion, just move the ball up a little bit.
A couple of yards,
right.
Please.
But when our offense, we averaged 1.1 yards a carry in that game. You cannot...
And that includes some of that wild night with Nick Petty, right?
Yeah. Throw a deep ball or something. Catch them off guard. Have some creative play calling. That's all I'm asking for. I just want something creative. Run a reverse. Not there, but, up a little bit farther on the field, even some creative play calling.
Do you put that safety there entirely on the offensive line? And the reason I ask that is it seemed at that moment is when Taj McGowan went into the doghouse and went to the sidelines and was invisible.
I don't put it totally on the offensive line, but I put it on the coaches and the play calling, number one. I put it on the offensive line and on the running back, maybe even the quarterback. I mean, if there was some issues. There was a jailbreak, though, and all of those guys came straight through, and there was no chance. You have got to, if we know, I knew that was going to be a bad situation. I knew that was going to happen. If you if you would have been at home here with me, I said, watch, this is going to be a safety. There's no way.
We were saying that in the stands, too, just so you know.
No, I'm sure a lot of people at home
thought.
were as well. But this is where we need to come up with some creative play calling.
And don't you think after 4 games, right, a third of the season, okay? We've now gone through how many running backs? And the news, of course, that UCF fans have been talking about all week is the dismissal from the program of William Stanback. So you've had Stanback, you've got Taj McGowan, you've got CJ. There's a common theme here.
Well,
that through 4 games, this team has an inability to run the ball. And as Kyle Israel said going into the Stanford game, and it's true every week, right? If you run for 150 yards as
you
a team,
can expect to win.
And we're not even close.
Right. The thing, let's address the Stanback thing real quick. Stanback didn't do what he was supposed to do, period. I don't know what that was. There's speculation that it's failed marijuana tests. Whatever. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. We obviously knew that he was in the doghouse anyway. We've talked about it on here. Everybody knew that. He's gone. We got to move on. Stanback is no longer involved. I hope that he, next year transfers someplace and plays like, a star and gets into the NFL, because I know that's what he wants. But he's gone. We can't do anything about it. He wasn't helping anyway.
But the point is that we've had a number of running backs, right, including him, through 4 games.
CJ
and
Jones.
They all have but they're all struggling.
They're all struggling, but they're struggling because the offensive line didn't open up holes.
And that is not a 4-game problem. That is not a problem that we
had
in the bowl game
against
NC State.
Yes.
That was an all-season. How many different combinations? Wasn't it something like 8 or 9 straight games last year where it was a different combination of guys, injuries and performance?
And you've had 4 different combinations already this year, so at least. Coach Key was the offensive line coach. Now he's the running backs coach, quarterback / offensive coordinator. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence with our offensive line problems in the last few years that Coach Key, his offensive call playing is not good. I would assume that he's having help from other people with that, but I don't want him to be the head coach, I can tell you that. I mean, if this is the way that he's going to do things and be totally uncreative and vanilla, I don't want him as the head coach, and I know a lot of other people back me up on that. Something needs to change there. I don't know, maybe Coach Barrett can start helping call some plays or something, but something's got to change. And maybe this week Justin Holman will come back. He was on the on the sidelines dressed. I saw it.
He was on the field.
I guess he
sidelines.
warmed up.
Yeah, he was a bit of a cheerleader on the sideline.
Did he warm up with the quarterbacks? Did you see
I was
that?
not in there until just right before game time, so I didn't
Somebody
see him.
said, I heard that he warmed up with it, so he had the ball in his hands.
Spoke with several people close to the program who say he's healing, and it's possible that if he's right, we may see him Saturday against Tulane.
And he is not the magic potion, as we talked to Kyle Israel about this, later on in the show. Don't expect for him to come back and everything just click. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. It'll be better, but it's not just going to magically.
I mean, he was there for that first game and a loss.
Yeah.
To FIU. So yeah, he's not the magic solution. It's a team struggle through these first four games.
But there are positives. The defense did a lot better against an SEC team who could have just destroyed us into the ground. They had a true freshman,
and they've had struggles
this
season.
They've had struggles, but still, they could have. If they would have clicked a little bit better, they could have just destroyed us. I mean, it was a lot better than it could have been, and we'll take that.
So what's head coach George O'Leary's reaction to the latest loss?
Well, here it is.
Well, tough when you played a good first half. Did things you had to get done. Second half, you go out, you can't turn it over, miss tackles. Those are things that cost you ball games. And people in position to make plays on balls and coverage, we got to make the plays. And that was really the difference in the second half. I thought was field position because of turnovers and then missed tackles, which we had how many third downs we had, and then we let them out of the pile with that quarterback run a little bit. But we just got to improve in areas that constantly is showing up each game.
All right, so there you have it, the wise words of George O'Leary.
Inspiring words.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be that upset for some reason. He needs to show a little bit of emotion. I would expect him to be pissed off. A lot of coaches in his situation with an 0-4 team, I would just expect them to be a little bit more pissed off. And it kind of bothers me. Welp. He started it out like that. Welp, I don't know. I think that, I don't know.
Well, as Coach O'Leary says, and after a decade plus, I guess I've bought into this too. It's a new season. AAC play begins. UCF can still contend for its third straight AAC title. I know there's some folks listening right now that are chuckling at that, but one game at a time. How about that for a cliche? Listen to this. We play Tulane coming up, noon Eastern, start on Saturday. Tulane is 121 out of 128 in total offense, 126 in scoring. They are 121 in total defense and 125 in scoring defense. Boy, I can't wait. I'm going up for that game. Well, that's going to be just a
hopefully
offensive explosion. Huh?
Hopefully we can have a little bit more of a win or something, a little bit more of something to talk about here.
Couple of numbers there, right? Those rankings. Crunching the Numbers is back. Our good friend of the program, John Swift.
Welcome to Crunching the Numbers, featuring John Swift.
Hello, Knight fans. As the Knights of UCF round out non-conference play, this week's number to focus on is the number 3. Specifically, let's look at a few stats. Third down, a big one. UCF is only converting 31% of their third downs, while on defense giving up 42% to our opponents. The other big stat is the third quarter. We're being outscored 39-3. UCF has lost their last 3 games away from home. Let's add 2 zeros to that and you get 300. UCF has not broken 300 yards or more of offense in a single game this season. Hey, maybe 3 yards a carry. That would be nice. We're only averaging 2.27 this season. Will the Knights win their 3rd consecutive American Conference title? We'll see. It all starts at Tulane next week.
All right, that was John Swift. Thank you very much. We're going to do that like that, I think, for a while now with him recording that and sending it to us.
It's good to have him back, and he's got a good way of finding these little
3,
tidbits.
Like the count. That's awesome. Yeah, I thought it was very cool.
Boy, that rushing number was telling, though, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The whole thing. I mean, I love that he can find stuff in the numbers like that. And, he's a numbers guy, and that's what he's doing for us. It's absolutely perfect.
And they'd be right there. 3 of those 4 games UCF has led at half. And I think collectively as the fan base, right?
Yeah.
We say to ourselves, what goes on at halftime? What is happening at halftime, which is something that we want to talk to UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, who joins us each week on the podcast about.
Welcome to Inside the Huddle with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, brought to you by the Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous. Waterford Lakes, 855 North Althea Trail, Orlando.
All right, Kyle Israel joining us again after another loss. I really don't know where to go again. I think there was definitely some positive things that came out of this game. I'm not nearly as upset as I was last week. Kyle, let us hear your thoughts.
Well, yeah, I'm in the same realm as you guys. I think it was certainly positive. When you look at the way we played in the first half, if we only played first half of football games, we'd be 3-1 right now. But unfortunately, that's not how college football goes. But I think that, for me, it came down to 2 things. It came down to obviously turnovers there in the second half, and then it came down to poor tackling in the open field. But I think that you started to see a little bit of progress with Bo Schneider. He obviously had the turnovers. I'm not sure the one that he tried to complete to Jordan Franks was really his fault. I think Franks overran, where he was supposed to be on the field, and then when the ball's, catchable, you got to make that catch. But I think the team as a whole played well on the road in a tough environment. Obviously, I think in years past, when you look at our defenses, we haven't done as well with quarterbacks that can run the football, and Nunez could certainly do that for South Carolina. I think we struggled with him running the football, but I still think we progressed some, and it was great to see Justin Holman dressed out in full pads on the sidelines, and if he's ready to go next week, I think we may see a return.
Yeah, I was wondering when I saw him over there, I was thinking maybe we would see him late in the fourth quarter or something if they wanted to just throw him in there I guess maybe if we were a little closer, that quite possibly could have happened. Bo Schneider's stats were 20 of 35 for 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, a couple sacks. He definitely did a lot better, for sure. I still think that we have some offensive line problems, and I think that that's part of him struggling as well. If the offensive line was playing better, if we had a running game going a little bit better. C.J. Jones came out there and did quite a good job, but I think that offensive line is still hurting us. What do you think about that?
Well, certainly there on the goal line, unfortunately, that was an incredible punt by South Carolina's punter to get the ball down there on the 1-yard line. And then, with the play call, I don't blame the play call. I thought that maybe we would throw the football there or get it out into the flat, but we decided to run the football, and we just never had a shot. The offensive line, you got to realize that when you're on the 1, there could be zero, and absolutely zero penetration from the defensive line, and they got back there and created a safety. But the offensive line still has to improve. They still have to improve in the running game. Our running game certainly isn't where we want it to be. I'm sure if you ask the coaching staff, that would be the case. And when you're working with young running backs, there's aspects of the running game, in my opinion, that do take time. We're not one of these SEC schools where we're getting, top running back recruits in the nation that are going to be able to come out there like Fournette did at LSU as a true freshman last year and run all over the place. We just don't have those guys at this point in our program's existence. And so when you have young running backs, you need to have a really solid offensive line that's going to create that first hole and then give them some space to make moves. And right now, I just don't think that those guys are getting that as much as we would like them to, and that just ultimately hurts the running game as a whole. And then when you look at Justin Holman compared to Bo Schneider, let's put the passing game aside, but Justin Holman is a threat to run out of the backfield. And these zone read plays that we tend to run sometimes, where with Bo, I don't even know if it's an actual read, but it may just be a handoff from the shotgun. But with Justin, those plays, you add in the ability to be able to pull the ball and run with it, as you see Nick Patty do sometimes. And we're not going to get that with Bo. Bo seems to be more of a pure pocket passer. I'm sure with our strength and conditioning program, his speed and his elusiveness and his quickness will improve as he's in that weight room more in the off season. But he's just not afraid to run the football. And you can see what it does for a true freshman like Nunez for South Carolina. When you can touch the ball down and run like he did successfully, it adds another dimension to the game and takes some pressure off of yourself. And right now, Bo's just the guy that's going to sit in the pocket and throw the football. But if we want to establish a running game at all, like you said, the offensive line is going to have to get better at the point of attack. And I feel like I've said that 4 weeks in a row now, but it's just kind of where we are.
And, you were talking about a young team, and Andrew mentioning Bo Schneider, 20 of 35. Young wide receivers, too. Several drops in that mix. What are you seeing from them? Are you seeing progress week to week with the wide receiver core?
I am. I think that Tristan Payton, for us, number 6, I think he's a star in the making. I think he probably has, in my opinion, from what I saw yesterday, the most upside. Trylko Smith obviously had a great touchdown catch over the shoulder. Bo threw a beautiful football, put a lot of arc on it to drop it in there for that touchdown there. I believe it was in the second quarter. Put us up 14-5 at the time. And, I think the receiving core, Trylko Smith and Tristan Payton, are definitely improving. I think that's them getting comfortable on the field, them understanding adjustments on routes and those type of things. That's going to continue to get better. And I'm really comfortable with those two moving forward. But when you look at where we are at the receiving core, Chris Johnson was a walk-on, and I would consider him our second/third receiver. And unfortunately, we're relying on a walk-on now. And you got to give credit to Chris for stepping up and being a guy that we feel comfortable getting on the field and catching the football for us. But that just shows you how young we are and how depleted we are at the position. And I think that that's something that's only going to improve with time. But again, you got true freshman wide receivers out there. You got a true freshman quarterback. If you expect us to go out and throw for 350-plus yards, I just don't think that's going to happen right now.
The one question people said to me when I was in South Carolina, please ask Kyle, and the messages that I got, ask Kyle about this. What happens when you're in there with the team at halftime? What adjustments are made? Because this is a program, not just in these 4 games, but it has seemed for years now, that comes out in that third quarter flat, doesn't seem to make the adjustments necessary, and that is very evident in the second halves of these games so far this season. Talk a little bit about that 15 minutes in the locker room with the team and the coaches.
I can tell you the process. We get in the locker room, we kind of break off into units, offense and defense, go their separate ways, and Coach O'Leary then meets with the offensive staff and he meets with the defensive staff and talks about adjustments. Now, in years past, I think we've probably made more adjustments than people feel like they've seen. But this year, I don't know how much room for adjustments our team is capable of adapting to based on the youth. It's going to be one of those themes throughout the year in these type of conversations is we're going to talk about the youth, and people may get redundant and people may be tired of hearing about it, but that's just where we're at. And there's only so many adjustments that you can go in at halftime with a young group of guys who, they're just trying to execute the initial game plan. And then when you have a game plan of, adjustments in the second half, it's not always easy to teach young guys and have them adjust on the fly. And you also got to realize that a more experienced team is going to come in at halftime and be able to give better feedback to the coaching staff. And the coaching staff are seeing things, but the type of things that you can see, for example, when I was playing as a senior, I could go into halftime with Coach Tim Sandler and say, hey, they're playing us strong in this formation, or I'm not getting any type of one-on-one matchups when we're in this type of formation, or I am. And I'm seeing that, whereas, and I'm sure the same was with Blake Bortles and Brett Hodges. He was an experienced guy. So the guy like Bo, I'm not sure he's able to come back and relay that type of information. And information coming from players in regards to halftime adjustments is really invaluable. And when you have a young team, I'm not sure those guys are just trying to execute the play called. They may not be, and usually aren't, trying to think of what adjustments can be made. So that needs to be considered, I think, because a lot of these teams that make great halftime adjustments, sometimes that's coming from the players and them speaking to the coaches about what they're seeing. And then coming out in the second half flat, I have been a part of teams that we have come out flat in third quarter games. Coach O'Leary is not a rah-rah guy. You're never really going to see, for the most part, unless we win a conference championship, a video in our locker room of Coach O'Leary up there dancing and trying to get guys going that way. I think he expects it. Is that right or wrong? Again, that's not how I would do it. I would be more of a little bit of a rah-rah guy, but that's just my personality, trying to get the guys fired up. But it's certainly not his. He's more direct, more to the point as far as what we need to accomplish, and then he kind of expects us to be ready to play. You know, that's just his style, but right or wrong, it's not how I would do it exactly, but it is the way that he does it. And you know, he can fire you up. You know, he does have a personality that can get excitable, and can get you going. I don't know how that's been. I've been out there for 8 years, but you know, I think we've certainly got to play. It's very obvious that, like I said before, when you look that we've been winning at halftime in 3 of these football games, and we end up not coming out on top at the end of the game, we definitely got to play better in the second half.
Does Coach O'Leary address the entire team as a whole at halftime, or is it just individual players?
He addresses the team. Now, the coordinators will address the offense and defense. Coach O'Leary, if there's a particular unit or as a whole, offense or defense or position, offensive line, D-line, linebackers, he'll address them as well. But then we'll kind of get the adjustments, or we'll get all on the same page as an offense and defense, and he'll bring the team together. He'll address us one more time, and we'll go back out.
A little bit more of a candid question here. Does he go in there and rip people? I feel like sometimes the team comes out like they've been ripped in the locker room during halftime, and they don't have any confidence left. Does that ever, I mean, have you ever seen that happen? Does that happen? I wrote on Twitter yesterday, I wrote GOL, don't go in there and rip these guys. They did a lot of positive things during the first half.
I saw that.
I mean, from a fan standpoint and from somebody who played college football, my coach used to do it all the time. We would go in there and he would just rip us apart. And I felt, 2 inches tall when I walked out of there some days, I'm not asking you to say that he's a bad guy or anything like that. I don't know. I think that's what fans think sometimes when the team comes out flat in the third quarter.
I think he addresses the team like that if they need to be addressed in that manner. If you're not comfortable being poignantly spoken to, for lack of a better term, or directly addressed in an aggressive manner, you're probably playing for the wrong university. That's just part of the culture. It's not something that I think is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I responded to it well personally, but it's really game by game based on how the first half went. That is going to set up what type of conversation he's going to have with the team at halftime. Yeah, sometimes it's kind of ripping into people to get us fired up and get us going, and other times it's positive and saying we're playing a great football game. We just got to make these adjustments. We're in this football game, play together, believe in each other, and let's go out and do what we know we're capable of doing. And you get that message as well. So I think it really depends on the game, but he certainly has his times where he can make it be known that he's not pleased with way things are going, and he'll certainly poignantly let us know that. But it really fluctuates game in and game out based on the first half.
Coach O'Leary often talks about how a game turns on 5 or 6 critical plays. For me, 2 of those plays were dropped surefire interceptions. Talk a little bit about the defense and what you saw. They're on the field a little bit longer than you want them to be, obviously, with the offensive struggles. But when you've got balls coming right at you like that, and especially first play of the game, you can't drop them.
Mm-hmm. No, and we do have some really talented young defensive backs, and I was surprised that we dropped that one on the first play of the game. I mean, that totally changes the momentum when you think of Nunez for South Carolina, a true freshman himself, getting his first start. If he goes out there and throws a pick first play of the game, I mean, that changes his psyche. So who knows what type of advantage that would have given us just based on, him being more cautious about delivering the football later in the game, knowing that his first pass as a starter was a pick. When you look at this team and you look at the type of games we've been in, especially with Furman and FIU when they're close, and South Carolina is a close game really until we turn the ball over and lose field position. Those are the type of plays we have to make to be able to win. When we're down players, down starters, and we have a very young team, you're looking for any type of momentum swing that you can get, any advantage that you can gain. For us to go and beat a team like South Carolina, regardless of how they're playing this year, on the road, at 12 o'clock kickoff, we need momentum swings to go our way. Interceptions would certainly help. You want to get as best field position as you can, especially for an offense that's still trying to come along. But I think the defense was on the field for too long again. I was sitting there watching the game. My father, a very intelligent football mind, and he turned over to me and said, we don't have a good enough defense to leave him on the field this much. What that leads to is guys getting worn out and lack of execution, and then ultimately lack of tackling and tackling in space. And, when they tried that trick play and that guy ran all the way for a touchdown, there were a couple times we could have made a tackle if we were one step closer to him, which really gave South Carolina the momentum, and we just missed the tackles. And that's one thing that you expect not to see out of a UCF football team, is struggling with tackling, and I think we certainly saw that yesterday. So that's why we need those momentum swings. That's why we need the offense to stay on the field. Whether you put points on the board or you play field position, you need to keep our defense off the field as long as possible. And it goes across the board in most of football in general, but especially with a team that you're not going to go up and put 35 points on the board offensively.
I did see some improvement from the defensive line, I think, against the run at times. There were positive things to see from them, positive things to see from some linebackers. We actually had a sack with a corner coming in, which was kind of interesting. Did you see improvement with them as well?
I think the defense is a part of the team that you seem to see some improvement every week. I mean, it's like they take 3 steps forward and 1 step back rather than 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I mean, I think that we're continually improving. The one thing that concerns me, guys, is that when you look at the AAC, teams score points in this league. Now, they may give up a lot of points, but teams know how to score and score quickly and spread the ball out and throw it all around. And that's what concerns me moving forward if we don't have Justin Holman back, is that these teams are going to put up some points, and we're going to have to score along with them. Now, I think that our defense had a good test with Stanford, a good test with South Carolina as far as athletes are concerned and covering guys in space and those type of things for young DBs. That's part of the game that you have to learn by playing. But I'm just concerned about the type of teams that we're going to be playing in our own conference that know how to score points and whether or not we can, score with them and ultimately one more than them. And that's what concerns me, and I'm hoping that we can continue to see that improvement. And the fact of the matter is that although we've lost to Furman and FIU, Stanford and South Carolina have players that we just may not see that caliber of player in our own conference. And you look at Memphis and Cincinnati, the game they had the other night, I mean, that's the upper echelon. That's the standard for our league right now. Cincinnati's quarterback comes off the bench and throws for a school record over 500 yards. I mean, that's who, if we want to win a championship or if we expect to be contenders in this conference, we're going to have to score points.
That also
about it.
Also shows to me in that game, I watched the majority of that game, there was not a lot of defense from those two schools. If we can, get this defense, really gelling, it gets better every week. So we've got maybe one game here before we really, really have to turn that on, and I hope that can happen.
Yeah, so do I. And I think that Tulane will be a good test for us on the road, but it's not going to be an environment like Stanford or South Carolina where the fans really play a huge factor as far as noise. And I think it's a team that this team doesn't seem to be lacking a ton of confidence. I mean, I think we're a confident football team. You look at when we had the momentum in that game and had the lead at halftime, and guys were into the game. You just watch the sideline. I mean, we were up. We weren't hanging our heads. And even in the loss, I didn't see a whole lot of guys hanging their heads. I think that they just want to improve week by week right now. And now going into conference play, it's always an emphasis. Conference play is an emphasis. And I expect our team to be one step better next week. And it would be really great if we had Justin Holman under center. But I think if not, Bo Schneider pulling a 35 for 180-something yards and that touchdown, I don't think his pass to Jordan Frank should have been an interception. We'd probably get a first down there and continue moving the football. But I think he did a lot better things. He looked pretty comfortable, and he looked poised.
So my guess is that when you looked into your crystal ball 4 weeks ago, you didn't have us 0-4. So I'm going to ask you, as conference play begins, teams got to go 6-2 to become bowl eligible. There's 0-0 in the AAC, so that's up for grabs. Based on what you see, week-to-week improvement, the injuries, the young players, what do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be hard to beat Cincinnati, right? I think it's going to be very difficult to beat Temple on the road. Temple's a very good football team. I think that East Carolina game is going to be tough in South Florida. I don't know if we're going to get bowl eligible. I can see 4 wins. I could potentially see 5 wins. But we've only seen, 1 game and 3 plays with Justin Holman under center for us. So I don't think that we have a true understanding of the football team that we have with him under center. And so I think that gives us a shot to maybe win a close football game if we really needed to get bowl eligible, but I don't see us going 8-0 in conference. I think we can for sure win 5 games. I'd be really, really happy and pleased if we won 6.
Coach O'Leary always talks about this being a season of individual seasons. I know that Coach O'Leary makes an emphasis of winning the conference every year and that being his main goal. What does he say to people? What does he do to make that seem like it's still the goal to the players?
Well, what he does is tonight, Sunday evening, when we have our team meeting going into the week, I don't know if he still uses the projector, but when I was playing, he would put a projector with our schedule, our wins and losses up to that point, and he'll go, this is Dawn, and here are our next 8 one-game seasons, and everything that we want as far as our goals as a team, which is to win a conference championship, is right here in front of us. That hasn't changed. And the first step to doing that is beating Tulane. And so he makes it very obvious, and he makes it known that despite what's happened early on in the season, all that can still be accomplished. And that's all on us, all on the players in regards to, making that happen. Now, yes, coaching goes into it and game planning and those type of things, but we know that, right? That's just a part of how it is. But for the players, you can't look ahead. There's nothing to look ahead at right now. All you can do is focus on Tulane because ultimately they're the first in the next 8 games that's the first game that needs to be won. So he'll address it on Sunday night. I think he'll probably readdress it on Monday when we have the team meeting, and he'll do that all throughout the week, constantly reminding us. You can see in player interviews that there are certain things that are kind of drilled into our brains, and they're almost basically speaking on behalf of Coach O'Leary a lot of times when they do these interviews during the week on Mondays, saying a lot of the same things that he does, and that's because he continually repeats it. If anybody tells you that they don't understand what the goal is for this team, they're lying to you in regards to players. It's very obvious, and he makes it clear multiple times throughout the course of the week that Tulane is the goal, that being the team we play this week. This is one step closer to the conference championship, and that is also attainable. So inside of the program, all is not lost. We need to learn what we can from these 4 games that we've just played, and we need to take those things that we've learned into Tulane, and he makes it very, very well known that that's what needs to happen.
Justin Holman is not the magic button that makes all of this thing work. Do you see like a serious improvement, though, if he does come back this week for some reason, or next week? Do you see that the offense automatically starts working again because the leader out there is there and knows the offense and all that?
Well, yeah, I do, and he's not this person you're going to throw on the field and magically we're going to be a team that can go out and win 8 straight games. But what he does provide is he does provide a different dimension to the offense with his ability to run the football, which gives Brent Key and Danny Barrett and Coach Beckton, when they're game planning, some more flexibility. He does provide experience, having already won a conference championship as a starting quarterback, having been a Hail Mary for a touchdown, knowing that despite the score, you're always in the football game. He brings the fact that he was the leader in pass skeleton this summer, and he was the guy running all of those type of things. So players naturally are going to look at him as a leader and know that when he's on the field like he's supposed to be, he's a guy that's won football games for this school, won a good amount of touchdowns, and he can potentially lead us to a victory. So although he may not just be the switch that you flip and all of a sudden we're winning games, he does bring an added element to this football team that can help the team as a whole psyche be more confident, and then he can help the coaching staff be more confident in the type of plays that they can call, the designs that they have for particular plays, and then the added dimension of him being able to run. So I think that he brings a lot to the team. I think when you look at any team across college football, when you lose your starting quarterback, when that guy returns, it brings a certain amount of confidence to the team. I do think that he plays a huge role, but it is a team game, and guys on the outside have to make plays. Offensive line still have to block. Running backs still have to find their holes. And I really think that he can probably get us in and out of plays at the line of scrimmage better than can Bo Schneider at this point in his career, just based off of experience. And those things are extremely valuable and really invaluable.
So it was already kind of a bleak situation yesterday with 0-4, tough loss there in South Carolina, but then it got kind of worse. A lot of us started tuning into social media and looking on message boards and all that, and we hear about defensive back Breon Rogers. Mm-hmm. He was a friend of yours. Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, Breon Rogers was a guy that I believe came into UCF a year after me. He played defensive back for us. He was out of Georgia. And unfortunately, this past week, he had a seizure and passed away. And rest in peace to Breon, because he was just a great guy. He was really, you have a guy in school growing up, you always hear about a class clown. Well, Breon was really the locker room clown and keeping guys happy, and he was always cracking jokes, always extremely positive, and you knew that when Breon was around, something funny was about to happen. And I think that Breon was the guy that UCF fans would know by name if we didn't have some of the starters that we had in our era, entrenched at defensive back, Jason Vincent, John L. Neal, Sharif Rashad, and Joe Burnett. If those guys weren't 3- and 4-year starters, then Breon certainly would have been out there. He did play a lot of nickelback for us. But a great athlete. I think he was like 6'2", 210, and could really run. And, it was hard for him to get on the field with some of the guys that we had. But he certainly was a great teammate. He's certainly a guy, like I told you guys earlier off air, 30 years from now, if he came up to me when I'm 60 years old and said, "Do you remember Breon Rogers?" I absolutely can never forget him. Just a great guy. And it's really, really unfortunate. It makes you realize how short life can be. That at the age of 28 or 29, he had the seizure and passed away. So very sad day for a bunch of us former players that knew Breon closely, and our prayers and thoughts are with his family for sure.
Thank you for that. We appreciate that. What's going on at the Little Greek this week?
Well, like I talked about a little bit last week, we finally are having our catering menus printed, so we're really, really pushing catering. If you have a business or having a party or any type of event where you potentially consider catering, please consider Little Greek. You can come in and grab one of the catering menus. I'm also going to put together, I believe it's for the UConn game, starting for that game, some tailgate packages where you can come and purchase chicken skewers, steak skewers, lamb or salmon skewers with like a large Greek salad and pita bread to go to take out to the tailgate. So that program will be starting here soon, and again, catering is something that we're really looking to do. And then if you're in the area up here in Waterford Lake, just around the corner from Best Buy, stop in and see us. I promise you'll be happy with the food. It's extremely fresh. The prices are very reasonable, and we've been thankful for the support that we've seen from the university thus far, students and alumni, and we hope to continue to cater those relationships and nurture that relationship with the school.
Hopefully next week, somebody said on Twitter that they wanted to hear you talk about a win. Maybe this is our week next week. So we will hope that that is the case, and we will talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for being here. We've had wonderful feedback since you've been on here, and it's an honor to talk to you every week.
Well, I appreciate it, and I've been a part of an 0-11 season, and I know how difficult it can be for players, coaches, and fans alike, and like I said on Facebook yesterday, I'm not going to lose faith. I'm going to continue to support. I'll still be out at all the games, and I would hope that the fan base would continue to do the same, keeping in mind that the Big 12 may be out there looking at the types of people we have traveling with us and the number of fans that we have at our games. Got to consider that for the future of this program. The play on the field isn't the only thing that needs to be considered, but the fan base support is being considered as well, so let's all keep that in mind.
Absolutely. All right, thank you very much. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good, guys.
All right, so let's talk about what happened in the rest of the American and our predictions and all that stuff.
Pretty exciting Thursday night game. A regulation, by the way. Memphis wins over Cincinnati 53-46.
There was not a lot of defense in that game.
No, but it's exciting to watch.
But these teams are scoring tons of points. That could be a scary thing if we can't score all those points, like Kyle said, with those other teams. That could be bad.
And, we're talking about our struggles at quarterback, introducing a new quarterback. East Carolina has had to introduce a new quarterback this season, and they beat the ACC's Virginia Tech Hokies 35-28. So hats off to East Carolina for a big win against a Power 5 program.
But guess what? We're not the only team that has been beaten by a FCS team in the American, which makes me feel a little bit better.
Does it make you feel
Hell
better?
Yes, it does.
I guess.
Yes, it absolutely does. SMU was beaten by James Madison 48-45.
Yeah. No defense there against James Madison.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Against a 4-0 James Madison.
Other winners, Navy 3-0, 28-18 over UConn. Houston 3-0, 59-14 over Texas State.
Navy's going to be a contender.
Yes.
big time. And
Yes.
I think that people overlooked that.
They have
with them
traditionally a
coming
good
in.
program.
They just have a weird, option offense thing that really confuses people. So they're going to be a contender. That could be a very interesting deal.
Some interesting games coming up this week. 3-0 Miami goes to Cincinnati. That's Miami here in Florida on Thursday. Friday night, 3-0 Memphis at the Cows over in Tampa. 3-0 Temple at Charlotte. UConn's at BYU. Sunday, 3-0 Houston at Tulsa. And Air Force is at 3-0 Navy. And East Carolina at SMU. Notice a trend there, by the way. A lot of 3-0 programs in the AAC.
Not a lot of 0-4.
Might be the only 0-4.
Yeah, well, we'll get it together. Maybe. We'll see.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah, we will see.
We're going to get it together against this week's opponent.
5 questions with an insider, getting to know this week's opponent.
This weekend, UCF travels to New Orleans to take on Tulane. Joining us now to preview the Green Wave, Paul Boron from Cox Sports Television. Paul covers Tulane, LSU, and the New Orleans Saints. Paul, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure to join you this week.
Tulane notched its first win of the season in Week 3, 38-7 victory over Maine. Much needed after 2 blowout losses to Duke and Georgia Tech. What went right for the Green Wave against the Black Bears?
Well, I think defensively was kind of one of the big things. They held the Black Bears to under 300 yards. They clicked a little bit on offense, but, more than anything else, they played an FCS team, which, you should beat if you're an FCS team. Not a shot there at UCF for not getting past Furman, but, it's a game you're supposed to win, and it's a game they obviously needed to win.
Well, against Maine, Tulane rushed for 205 yards. They put just 25 on the ground against Duke, 71 against Georgia Tech. What do you think UCF fans can expect to see from Tulane's run game?
The last game may have given them a little bit of at least confidence running the football. Dontrell Hilliard ran for 117 yards. The team, on average, carried it for almost 5 yards per carry. But UCF, as you well know, is the only team that's worse against the run than Tulane. So it's not a strength of UCF's. So that may be the one thing where Tulane might be able to move the ball a little bit, is running the ball. But their big problem is, and has been, the offensive line. They just don't get enough push. They just don't have a big enough offensive line. Up the middle is really the problem. Both guards and the center, they get beat a lot, and that not only affects the run game, but makes Tanner Lee, who's a pretty decent quarterback, have to rush his throws.
You mentioned, Lee, some wide receiver targets that are interesting. Devon Breaux led Tulane 4 catches, a touchdown in each of the first 2 games. And then different wide receiver, Shermaid Mady, if I'm pronouncing that properly, had 5 catches for 118 yards against Maine. What should we look for in the passing game?
Well, they'll certainly look for Breaux, I think, again, and Beatty, as well as Teddy Veal. Veal had 5 receptions for 94 yards. Breaux didn't get targeted in that last game, and as you and I had discussed earlier in the week, that we found that interesting. But Coach Johnson said in his press conference that he played, but they wanted to concentrate in that game on getting it to the running backs a little bit, and so Hilliard had a decent game receiving. I believe he had 35 yards as well. So I think you'll see more balance again, and you'll probably see Breaux targeted quite a bit because he is probably the best receiver on the team.
Other side of the ball, defense. Green Wave gave up a lot of yards and points against Duke and Georgia Tech. Of course, got things under control with Maine. What can UCF fans look for in the American opener for both teams?
Well, they're fairly decent against the pass game, not great. The first game against Duke, their defense really held them in it for a while, but then they were just on the field so much that Duke ended up pulling away. And Georgia Tech, with their triple option offense, they're difficult to defend, but they're actually decent in the passing game. And I'll give you 2 guys to keep an eye on. Nico Marley, their junior linebacker, he is their leader in tackles for loss, but that's not even the most interesting thing about him. He is the grandson of Bob Marley. So a little Buffalo soldier right there in the middle of the Green Wave defense. And then Dorian Monroe, their senior safety, watch him. He makes a lot of tackles. He has started since day one, since he got on campus. He's only had 1 non-start, and that was this season against Georgia Tech. But he has played and started in every game since he
came to Tulane except for that one game, and he's now in his senior year. So it feels like we've been talking about Dorian Monroe forever in New Orleans, and it's because he's been on the field so much the last 4 years.
UCF fans noticeably upset with the start for the season. Meantime, Tulane head coach Curtis Johnson just 12-27 into his fourth season. Any sort of hot seat there for him?
Well, it's a weird thing because the expectations aren't high. This is a school that was devastated by Hurricane Katrina, and yes, we're 10 years removed from Katrina, but it had a significant impact on everything sports-wise. I would say this about Curtis Johnson. He's very popular in New Orleans, former wide receivers coach for the Saints. He grew up in the river parishes, which are out west of town, basically about 15 minutes west of the airport. So he's a very popular person. He does very well recruiting, especially out in those river parishes. He's done a pretty good job of keeping guys in town that would go normally, not like obviously he's not stealing guys from LSU, but guys like that would go to Southern Miss or some of those kind of schools. He's been managing to keep those kind of kids in town. But like you said, the record's 12-27. They did go to the New Orleans Bowl 2 years ago where they lost. They had a chance to win it at the end of the game. I think expectations would be, hey, let's be around 6-6, 7-5, and get to a bowl. You know, not every year, but on a fairly regular basis. But if they go south, there may be a little more chatter this year about Curtis being on the hot seat.
And UCF fans for years now have been able to visit New Orleans when the team has played at Tulane. They're familiar with the Superdome. The home of the Saints was the longtime home for Tulane, but Tulane has a new stadium. Talk a little bit about that, and also give fans a restaurant or a bar or something off the beaten path that they might want to check out when they're visiting.
Well, we'll start with the stadium, and obviously you came out to a game a few years ago, and you saw what it was like in the Superdome. I mean, whatever the announced crowd was that day was obviously inflated because they always inflated it. But even if it was truly 15,000 or whatever they said it was a 72,000-seat stadium. So it was cavernous, and it was hard to get emotionally invested in football games, covering them even because there just wasn't much of a crowd. And if the opposing team didn't travel, it was brutal because the other sideline would be completely empty. So this new stadium, Ullman Stadium, beautiful facility on campus. They had no space to work with, really, and they built it right where the practice fields were. And it's 30,000 seats. It's the perfect size for them. It provides a great environment. You know, the facilities as far as concessions and all that are terrific for the fans. The video board's awesome. They did a really, really good job. And I've been to a fair amount of the American Conference stadiums, including the new one in Houston, and I would say Tulane's is certainly up there. I would say even probably if you're going to compare the two newest stadiums, I think their stadium is better than Houston. It's really a nice facility, and Rick Dixon, the athletic director there, who's retiring in May, has done a great job in securing that. I mean, that was his baby, was trying to get an on-campus facility because it's really what the school needed is an on-campus facility. So that's certainly something that they hope that they can build upon in future years, is having that stadium on campus and keeping the crowds on campus. As far as Knights fans coming to town, obviously everybody knows Bourbon Street, million places down there, French Quarter and all that. I would say closer to Tulane's campus, the Uptown and Garden districts are awesome. If you're going to get a po' boy, just probably a mile from the Ullman Stadium, there's Mahoney's, which has been featured on the Food Network and things like that. They've got a po' boy called the Peacemaker, which I think has fried oysters and a million other things. It's huge. Certainly that's a good restaurant. I think bar-wise, same area. There's a great place called the Bulldog I think fans would like. If they're coming into town on Friday, NOLA Brewing Company has a tour every Friday from 2 to 3, but it's not really even a tour. I think it's $5 and they open the taps for like an hour. So I would recommend those things. Obviously, the French Quarter is there, and that's all lots of fun. And you really can't go wrong in New Orleans. You could go to Frenchman Street and listen to great live music. So Knights fans that are making the trip, they're going to love the stadium, and there's obviously plenty to do in New Orleans.
And I will be there in time for that brewery tour on Friday. Thank you so much, CST's Paul Bourne. One more thing, Paul. How can folks follow you on social media?
Well, on Twitter, it's pboron88, and then obviously a lot of my stories air on coxsportstv.com or our YouTube page. And like you said, we cover LSU, the Saints, Louisiana Tech, Tulane, you name it, basically in the Gulf South, we cover quite a bit.
CST's Paul Bourne, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, so what do you think is going to happen this week? What's your prediction? How did our predictions do last week?
You did pretty good. You had 34-7.
Okay.
I think
so. I was closer.
I think that's what.
So
you
technically,
had 35-7. I had 45-12. So I was kind of close on the offensive number. All right, I'll go out on a limb. UCF 13, Tulane 12.
I'm going to say 14-7 Tulane.
Not the good guys?
No, I don't think so. 0-12. 0-12.
Really?
I've revised my my thoughts on the season. I think it's just going to be 0-12. The last time we were 0-4, we wound up 0-12. Thank you to UCF Sports Info for that information the other day on Twitter. You know, the thing is, I'm always wrong on my predictions, so that's, hopefully I will be wrong. But the last time we were 0-4.
Just saying. You're just saying.
Just saying.
Something to be a little bit more positive about are former UCF players in the NFL. Last week, I was able to check out Blake Bortles in that big win over Miami. He did not do as well this Sunday against New England, but New England's tough to win at. But some other guys have come up big.
Yeah, Latavius Murray was one of those guys. He had 26 carries for 139 yards and 1 touchdown in Oakland's 27-20 victory over Cleveland. And here is a call from CBS Sports on a Murray 54-yard run.
2-touchdown lead here and another huge hole. Murray takes it across the 40. Latavius Murray brought down inside the Browns 35. Joe Hayden finally makes the stop on Latavius Murray, 54 yards.
Well, right up the gut, right behind Jamarcus Webb, but huge hole. And then you get to see some of the skill of Latavius Murray. For 6'3", 230, the guy can run, but really nice open field running. If you saw this guy in person, he looks a lot like Adrian Peterson in his uniform.
How cool is that for Latavius Murray to be in the same sentence as Adrian Peterson? That's pretty cool.
And how cool was it that we got to see him play for our UCF Knights? And boy, do we miss him right now.
Absolutely. We miss all those offensive linemen that we had at that point, too.
Another notable former Knight, Brandon Marshall, wide receiver, New York Jets, 10 catches Sunday, 109 yards, 1 touchdown. Standout performance for the former UCF Knight.
Awesome. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
The UCF women's golf team finished 15th at the Mason Rudolph Championship. Junior Ashley Holder notched her second straight top 10 finish of the season. Up now, the ladies are taking part in the Annika Intercollegiate at the Reunion Golf Club.
UCF Rowing announced its 2015-16 schedule as the Knights celebrate the 20th season of the varsity program. 3 fall scrimmages open the year with a pair at Lake Pickett.
UCF women's soccer drops a 3-2 decision to UConn on campus Sunday. Meantime, for the 7th straight year, the UCF women's soccer team was honored with the NSCAA Team Academic Award in recognition of earning a team grade point average of 3.0 or higher during the 2014-15 academic year.
Fall ball for UCF baseball is underway. Practices are open to the public at J. Bergman Field Monday through Friday at 2:15 p.m.
Men's golf placed 4 of their 5 golfers in the top 20 at the Hartford Hawks Invitational. UCF finished as runners-up in the 20-team field. This weekend, UCF in action at the Jackrabbit Invitational in Valentine, Nebraska.
Cross country wins the FL Runners Invitational in Titusville the 4th straight year. Up next is UCF in action at the Florida State Invitational on Friday.
UCF volleyball, 3-set loss to Temple Sunday. That followed a 3-set sweep of UConn to open American play at the venue Friday. the 2014 team's NCAA appearance was recognized during a banner drop on Friday.
Strong week for the UCF men's soccer team. A 2-2 draw on the road at Memphis and a midweek 3-2 win over Jacksonville. Up next, FIU on campus Tuesday night at 7. UCF men's tennis wrapped up the Bedford Cup on Sunday. Junior Chris Barras earns victories in singles and doubles play. UCF tallied 14 single victories and 7 double wins. Up next, the Knights go to Tulsa on October 3rd for the ITA All-American Championships. All right, I think that's going to do it for us. This has been episode number 53, and I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF Knights, UCF, let's go Knights. UCF, charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold, charge right through the line. Victory is our cry, BSETO, our life. Tonight our Knights will shine.